Well, Joe Biden insulting even more voters, his latest attack being compared to Hillary Clinton's 2016 deplorables comment. Take a look.
Do we really think this is as good as we can be as a nation? I don't think the vast majority of people think that. There are probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of the people out there that are just not very good people. But that's not who we are. The vast majority of the people are decent. We have to appeal to that, and we have to unite people, bring them together.
So, Greg, I'm wondering exactly who he's talking about, especially given the events of the last week.
He's a comic genius. The fact that he talks about we really need to unite people, except
right.
the 30 to 40 million people that I just said aren't worth having around. I'd like to know who he's talking about. Are they all white people? Are they male? Are they female? Are they handicapped? Are children part of it? Remember, this is the same guy who decides how black you are after putting enough blacks behind bars. The worst part, he's just an appeaser. And he's appeaser to the hard left because he likes being in power. Like I said, this dissent and divisiveness keeps people like Joe Biden safe in power. If he's, the next riot and he's president, he'll be in his sunglasses and his aviator jacket throwing the first ceremonial brick.
Yeah, one. Doesn't he need all of the votes that he needs? I mean, he needs as many voters as possible, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, Katie, why would you think that he doesn't want votes? I mean, I don't know who he's talking
because
about.
He's saying
I mean,
10%
Greg's right.
of the population are bad people.
Well, he said they're not good people. He didn't say who they were, and so that's what Greg was talking about. I mean, to my mind, I think politicians shouldn't be pundits. I mean, when they try to categorize an opponent's base, if that's what he was doing, I think they make mistakes. They get themselves in trouble. So to my mind, it stirs up the opponent's base, right? I mean, you can imagine that soundbite's going to be repeated in the Trump echo chamber for days to come and say, oh, it's about Trump people, but he didn't say that. So to my mind, it's not going to change any votes, pro or con. I don't think anybody's going to necessarily say, I'm going to vote that way because of this statement. But, some people will try to exploit it.
Yeah,
so
see,
Jesse,
it's the people who respond to it who are at fault. It's the people who pounce.
Yeah, the pouncing
The people who
happens.
pounce.
The pouncers. Yeah, the pouncing has commenced, Jesse.
Yes. Joe Biden is dead wrong. I think it's probably around 20 to 25% of the population that are not very good people. I mean, come on. I mean, look, watch TV.
That's what I was gonna say.
Go on the internet. I mean, it's much higher than 10 to 15%. And, is this a scandal? No. If Trump said it, would it be a scandal? Yes. Am I that outraged about it? I tried to be. I spent all day trying to work up some real outrage over this comment. I just couldn't deliver it. I'm sorry, because against the backdrop of whole neighborhoods being burned to a crisp and having people pulled out of their big rigs and knocked unconscious, I'm not that worried about what Joe Biden says on a podcast or a live stream. What I'm really concerned about is what Joe Biden does and what Donald Trump does. And this is how the election's going to be. They're going to be judged on action and who's going to be a man of action and who's all talk. And I think we know who's who.
So, Martha, it seems like a lot of what Joe Biden says is kind of baked into the cake, so to speak, about how people feel about him.
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of laughing a little bit here because I wasn't sure who he was talking about either. And as we often find with some things that the former vice president says, it's awfully hard to figure out exactly what he was talking about. And I think that has led to some confusion with this comment. Like my colleagues here, I looked it over a couple times. I read it. I'm trying to figure out, was he referring to maybe the people who were committing violence during the protests? Was he separating them out 10, 15%? And then I thought, well, if he's just talking about the country, I have to agree with Jesse. There's probably a larger number than that you could say might fall into the group of, people that you wouldn't necessarily want to hang out with or you don't think are good, nice people. And I guess for everybody, that number, the people that you would be directing that at would be a different group. So I think it was a confusing statement. I agree with Jesse that it is. It doesn't really amount to. One of the things that I think is very clarifying about this moment, but between the virus and watching the incredible violence and unrest that we've seen in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, is that it makes you not sweat the small stuff. And I think this falls in that category. I think Joe Biden is trying to register. He's trying to say stuff that sticks and matters, but I think he's having a hard time.
Yep, that's for sure.
Katie?
I think that's pretty evident. All right, coming up next. Yes, Greg?
I just want to make a point that there is something important to be about this. The fact that when Trump criticizes, it's an individual. It's always an individual. With the Democrats, it's always groups.
Yeah, well, you're pouncing right now, so we're going to move on from that.